Dave's 5 Hot Takes. Yeah! Welcome back to Dave's 5 Hot Takes, everybody. So glad everybody is back. This is a really fun interview podcast. So I'm going to be doing a few different types of podcasts with this Dave's 5 Hot Takes. And this one's an interview. And what we're doing is really fun. We're having friends of mine come on and they bring their 5 hot takes. So today I have the incredible, illustrious, illuminated James Bay all the way from London town as we talk about. James is becoming one of my favorite people in the world. I met him only about a year and a half ago. He played a show here at the Ryman. We talk about that some. And it was amazing. It was so much fun to be in a crowd that was just so electric. Every single word, everybody was singing along. It was sold out. It was a great show. We share a mutual friend, John Green. You'll hear us talk about who we both love with all of our hearts. He's another Arsenal fan, which makes us even closer. No, I don't know. James is a Newcastle fan, which you'll hear us talk about. We're both footy fans, if you're, as they call it, across the pond. But John connected James and I when he was in town, and so he got me and some friends tickets to his show, and we got to hang a little bit afterwards. And I was so struck by James's warmth. He's just such a kind, wonderful dude. I mean, I really, really can't say enough about how amazing he is. One of my favorite things about music is when I get to meet people that I really enjoy and respect, and they end up being even kinder, more wonderful, normal people. And James is definitely that. This is just some fun facts about James. This sort of blew my mind, so there's even more perspective before you hear the interview. 5 million albums sold worldwide, 6 billion global streams, 1.5 million albums sold in the UK, double Brit Award winner, 3-time Grammy nominee, Ivor Novello Award winner, tracks Let It Go and Hold Back the River are triple platinum. Number one album, Chaos in the Calm, is certified double platinum and is played on stage with the Rolling Stones, Ed Sheeran, and Louis Capaldi. I mean, if that's not a brag sheet, I don't know a brag sheet. And again, the great thing about James is you would never know his accomplishments if you sat down and hung out with him, because it seems like the dude you grew up playing soccer with or riding bikes around the neighborhood. He's just such an incredibly warm, wonderful, supportive friend. I'm really proud to have him as someone that I get to know and hang out with every now and then. This was such a fun interview. Something that you need to know about James that I think you'll see is not only is he a great songwriter, not only is he a great singer, but he's a really great guitar player too. And it's fun. Throughout this interview, he had his guitar with him, and so he would intermittently kind of, reference that, and he would play, and I just thought this is such a great thing. So it was such a fun interview. He was so up for it, which is the best part about this podcast with this interview section, is when people are really like, all right, he actually asked to have some time to prep, which was like the greatest compliment of all time. I asked him to be on the podcast a few months ago, and he's like, I'll do it, but I want time. I want really good 5 takes. And I was like, all right. So, and he nailed it. We had so much fun. So without any further ado, here's James Bay on Dave's 5 Hot Takes. Here we are at Dave's 5 Hot Takes, and this one's a real honor. I'm with the one and only James Bay, all the way from London town. You're in London, right?
I am indeed. Yes.
And I want to brag. I'm going to brag a little bit. Okay. So James is a newer friend. We have a mutual friend named John Green, who we both deeply love.
Superhero.
Another sort of embittered, heart-hurting Arsenal fan, but we'll quickly move through that. And I saw you play at the Ryman. Which one was that? End of last year?
No, it was actually March 2019.
Good gracious.
Time is flying.
I mean, gracious sake. Which you lit the place on fire. Oh, and hey, do you see what I did there?
Okay. You've already said, John. This is good. This is good.
So, but it was such a good show, and everybody. I love those kind of shows for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I love so much about that night is it just felt like everybody was in. Like, I love looking around. Nobody's like standing up and feeling it, and it was cool. It's such a great show. And you know about the Ryman and the how special the place is. And I have a sort of an affinity now. I'm going to say it. Feel like I have an affinity with Nashville from making my first record there. That's right.
I've been back recently recording as well, but I've done a whole load of shows over the years there, and that was, I'm very honoured to say, that was my third night that I'd ever done in the Ryman. Great. So it's very cool. Dave, we are very naturally and beautifully just rolling into this, but I just have to say, so I've said it. Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
Don't you turn this back on me.
This might be the earlier days of the sort of the full podcast version of Dave's 5 Hot Takes, but I have followed you on Instagram doing this on stories. I am such an intense geek for this show. And you said if you just spare me an hour, and I've thought since you asked me to do this about how I'd like 10 hours if I could have them. We'll work it out. We'll work it out. But thank you, man.
So James, this was really fun for me. One of my favorite things about doing this, especially with friends, and especially with newer friends, is I get to do sort of like the deep dive on the background. Now, you and I, last time we hung out, we were here in Nashville. We shared some brekkie, and a cuppa, which I guess that's all Aussie, but
it's good.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about this, you and I, but it was fun here in the last few days to actually do like a deeper dive on, all things Jimmy Bay. and so I want to ask you this, like, when was the first time you got the bug? Like, when were you like, okay, this music thing, because I know your brother plays, right?
Yeah. And we grew up, we're 18 months. He's 18 months older than me. He's only 18 months older than me. And we grew up very close in every way. And we sort of fell in love with all sorts of different obsessions, be it football, be it skateboarding, be it music, around the same sort of time. So we always had each other to bounce off. Music and drawing were the first ones. Music might have been the first one, as far as when we were really little kids. And I remember hearing it was music that my mum would play, which she'd go and find on the radio, or she'd play her own record collection. And that was soul music, Stax and Motown stuff typically. And my dad was always all about rock and roll, as far as what to him was more recent, which was the Stones, because he was in his sort of teens and his 20s when they were first coming through. But it was going back to sort of Chuck Berry and Little Richard and that kind of thing as well. And he loved Bruce Springsteen as well. He was a big fan of that. So we had such a great, and they both liked other things in between, but we had all of that kind of coming at us from every angle around the house when we were little kids. And in a way, that was the first time I feel like I got the bug, because I had my own excitement for it. I watched my brother's excitement, his independent excitement for it. And we would start to sort of bounce off the walls and stay up kind of late into the night when we were little kids, having the radio on or playing records. So the other place where we were getting music was when we turned the radio on, and pop music, all the pop music of the sort of late 90s and the early 2000s was sort of jumping off there, and we were going crazy for that. And then by the time I was 11, I was picking up a guitar like a lot of kids at school. Again, there were sort of people around, and you just sort of bounce off everybody. And the cool thing was to be able to play a Red Hot Chili Peppers riff or something, or Smoke on the Water or something like that. Yeah. But my dad played, he'd always been a fan of Eric Clapton. One Saturday afternoon, he put a CD in the CD player, and he turned it up quite loud. I was in my bedroom at the top of the stairs, and I heard it through the house, and it was Layla. And I sort of,
the siren song.
I sort of fell down the stairs essentially to get to the music, to get closer. I sat through the whole recording, and then I played it again. Which
can we say that's a lot to do for a kid, because that's a long song.
Absolutely,
the piano outro. Yeah,
absolutely, man, absolutely. But there's still and at the end of the day, for all of the sort of long piano outro, it's all so emotive. That song is so emotive.
That's a good one.
At every point. So I fell in love with that and learning to play the guitar, and it just sort of all, grew from there. So the bug might have started when I was maybe even 3 or 4, as far as, wow, music moves me so much.
You know what I think is so fascinating about that is one of your fellow Brits, and I know a good friend of yours, I listened to an interview with Ed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And both of you guys were Clapton. Like, Clapton was sort of the gateway drug for both of you guys.
Yeah, and we were about the same age. And I saw it last year, very lucky to get to tour with Ed. He invited me out to open for him in football stadiums around Europe. It was a wild experience, wild experience. But I did get to talk to him about that at one point. And he said, so he was about 11 years old as well.
Wow.
We were about the same age by a few months. And he had seen, there was a big Jubilee celebration.
Queen's
Jubilee, for a celebration for the Queen. There's a big live event outside Buckingham Palace, and I remember this. I don't remember it as vividly as him, but Eric Clapton played Layla at that event, and it was live and it was put on TV, and he was sat in front of the TV saying to his dad, "What is this?" And it blew him away. So it's
isn't it? This is what I love about that, though, and I think this is really profound. Is that really, and you said it well before, technically you should have been listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Stones, whatever the band of the day was with a predominant guitar playing guy. But isn't it so encouraging to artists like you and I that music is timeless? Because really, Clapton is who people 10, 15 years older than you and I should have been the guy, you know. But instead, here you are hearing a song that's 20 plus years old. And what's cool about that story too is that Ed's was live. So it's not just the recording that moved him, but the song. Yours is the recording. So it's also that. So it's this cool moment. And I think it's such an encouraging thing for us songwriters and artists is to realize like great music is just always great music.
It is. And well, that's the great message. Yeah. If you've written a really good song, it's going to translate live on record or covered by somebody and actually to that point, I ran down the stairs when my dad was playing that song in the living room. I lost my little mind. I said, "What's this?" Once it had finished, he told me what it was, and we played it again, and we listened to it, and it was amazing. And then a few days later, it came to me, like maybe 2 days later, it came to me how great that was, and I ran downstairs to the sort of rack of CDs to find it, take it up to my room, and wear it out. And in doing that, I got up to my room. I put the CD in, I looked for the track number on the back and I pressed play. And this is so lame, I have a guitar right next to me. But instead of getting, I got...
Oh my gosh.
And I got the acoustic version. And I was kind of like, it was such a magical but confused state that I was in.
Because I was like, most of my childhood.
I was like... this is so absolutely what I wanted and so not what I wanted.
How crazy.
But what a great example that Unplugged record is of great songs translating still as, in some different version as Layla does in that Unplugged version. So
how long from 11, when's your first gig? When do you start writing songs and going, I'm going to go play songs?
So my brother we got quite into all of it together. We just sort of did everything together, given we grew up so close in age. And neither of us had ever been afraid to sort of sing in the back of a car, like when we were traveling somewhere and putting music on, with our folks or anything. So, and because we were so sort of comfortable around each other, I learned to play a few things. I remember learning to play like Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison, stuff like that, sort of simpler stuff before getting to the Clapton riffs. And I would sing, or Alex would sing along. And so by the time I was about 14, we'd written a couple of songs, basic songs, but learned all sorts of Stones covers and stuff. And that was when we were first... I remember one of our first shows was in a pub. You play in sort of pubs and clubs around your hometown, which was just outside London for us. It wasn't in London. We were about an hour outside London. We would go to the pubs in the afternoon when kids were allowed in and say, if you need any music, we'd love to play.
Wait. So tell me about this because I don't know this as an American. So pubs that's not anybody can go and eat at any time?
No, not after a certain time from sort of 8 in the evening. It's not really for kids anymore. Most pubs, gotcha. not all pubs, but most pubs. But they do like to have entertainment and stuff, and covers bands and stuff. And we said, we sort of boldly, we'd never considered that they might just say, your kids, get out, no chance. We just go in and ask. Or we get people's like email addresses or phone numbers. Actually, it was a lot more phone numbers or going in and asking. And my brother actually did a lot of that. Credit to him for doing the most of that and being the sort of the agent for the band.
So are y'all both singing?
More or less, he was the lead singer.
Okay, wow.
We were also already into like bands like the Black Crowes, who sometimes Rich Robinson would do a song, so we do that kind of thing. And like with the Stones, Keith would do Happy, so we do that kind of thing. So, but yeah, we did a lot of the singing and had all the sort of confidence because we had the confidence from and in each other. We were able to sort of do it like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was a magical time. All of that.
So did you? When did that? Because at some point, obviously, there's a moment where you sort of go, okay, I'm going to sort of go it on my own.
Yeah, we did our thing. I was from about the age of sort of 13 or 14. Me and Alex were sort of joined at the hip musically. And then by the time I was 17 or 18, well, maybe 18 or 19, maybe it was a bit older than that, because we did almost a solid sort of 5 years of just playing in bands, together as a band together. And I I became the one in the band who kind of got I want to say kind of got bored the fastest with the present outfit, and I wanted to change it into something that was a bit more like this or something that was a bit more like that. And then I started seeing trios, thinking more about bands like Cream, and I remember finding the John Mayer trio record and going, oh, this is a thing, and wanting to, having been a sort of sideman, go to the center. And I was also falling in love with James Taylor stuff and Carole King stuff and these sort of solo singer-songwriter types.
Right.
Wanting to try it myself. So I was about 18, I guess, when I got into doing that. And yeah, I left whatever the last outfit that me and my brother were doing to go off and try it on my own.
So tell me this, because, you know, myself and a lot of my friends here in the States, there's a pretty well-worn path of like, you know, where you play. You know, if you're doing acoustic stuff, there's a lot of coffee. Like at the time, you know, this is in the sort of like late 90s, early 2000s. There's a lot of coffee shops, which are becoming all the rage, you know, because that's still sort of a newer thing.
Yeah.
So there were those. And then if you like had a band, there were clubs that were just music venues, you know, where you'd go play those that were anywhere from 300 to 500. And then as your career progressed, but everything is sort of localized. But, you know, the States are huge. I mean, you could, and I know a lot of people that are like this, you can have massive followings in sections of the States.
Sure.
And then have, you know, Texas itself has a circuit where guys and bands and girls don't ever leave. And they're just massive in Texas.
Yeah.
But if they drive 200 miles anywhere, they're not as big. So in the UK, I've always been so curious, like you're an 18, 19-year-old singer-songwriter. How do you get your thing out? Where are you playing? Like, what are you doing?
I think me, myself, and when we were teenagers, me and my brother, we were really inspired by it and aware of that idea of how it worked in America. And we never for a second recognized that America is enormous compared to the UK. Like the UK is this tiny place where one day when you get to sort of arenas arenas, there's sort of 20 arenas to do maybe.
And that's it.
And then you've done.
And so when you've done, your UK tour is going to be those.
It's like 3 weeks, your UK tour at that point, maybe 4.
Wow.
So, and of course in America, you can tour one of the coasts endlessly. Anyway, at 18 or 19, the way that I decided to try and do it, and I guess the way that sort of helped me, is you go, you know, completely unknown and you know, all on your own, to somewhere like, my choices were Brighton, which is down on the south coast. Right. Brighton is a very sort of creative and buzzy kind of student town, but again, just with a lot of sort of creative types. London is kind of the big mecca, but it's the most expensive place to try and get to or be in. And then everywhere else from where I was living, which is about an hour north of London, was a bit too sort of far and expensive for me to really get to. So I spent a couple of years going to Brighton and then it got to London. But these cities, when you get to them, my thing was just to do those places as much as possible, work through all the open mics where you do sort of open mic nights where you do 3 songs. I did this in Brighton a lot. I do 3 songs in 20 minutes in a one pub at 7:30 p.m. I'd leave and I'd walk down the street to the next one.
No way.
3 songs in there at sort of 8:30 p.m. And so you do a lot of waiting around to get your slot, sort of thing.
So let me ask you this. So when you're doing that, are you driving down or are you taking the train?
It was a train. For most of the Brighton time, I was living in Brighton. I was a student in Brighton.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
I had a room basically. And so I was on foot the rest of the time. These cities in you know, and there are hubs within cities in America like this, but there's corners of London that are sort of pedestrian enough that you can wander around. Sometimes it is a lot of walking, and you're walking like 40 minutes to one place and then 50 minutes to the next. But yeah, it's a lot of that, and it was a lot of that around Brighton as well. Brighton's a bit smaller, so it was easier to do it. And it's just, and the other thing I did in Brighton a lot was busk. I don't know if that word.
No way.
Does that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I remember sort of cautiously and nervously kind of coming up with the idea that I'd try that in Brighton, having seen it a lot, and I would go up to pretty sort of sturdy, regular buskers, and between songs I'd say, hey, what's the deal? Can we just do this? Will I get arrested?
No way.
And they said, look, as long as you're cool and you're not doing anything offensive, the police in Brighton typically are just fine with you doing it. And I would sort of jangle home with a good chunk of change in my guitar case. As a sort of struggling student. But I did that a lot on weekends and sometimes.
You know what? So this is the thing that I want to draw attention to, that I think is really fascinating about your story. And also, so this is what's cool. So Andy Grammer, do you know Andy? He's an American musician.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
He's had big hits in America.
Yes.
wonderful guy, but he busked
Right.
like for a while.
Fantastic.
Ed busked, you busked.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
I think there's something that's so fascinating about people who spend time doing that. And I think your pedigree is so fascinating because, you sort of, you hit your 10,000 hours at 20. Do you know what I mean? Like you put in all this time.
Yeah.
So by the time you're really a professional, you're 5 years, 6 years ahead of guys like me who at 21 were like, okay, now I go out and I start this career.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating because all three of y'all, if you see any of you play, you look like you know what you're doing and you've done this for a long time.
It's interesting that 2 years ago, it was a summer of sort of festivals in the UK that we were doing. And on a similar point on the bill at some of those festivals was Shawn Mendes. Shawn is obviously gargantuanly successful and fantastic, and it's all very wonderful, and congrats to him. And he's a great dude. I like Shawn a lot. And he's what is he now? He's 21, I think.
He's young. He's really young.
He's like approximately 10 years younger than me. And his experience was so different. I mean, sure, he had a life on social media, sort of pushing his musicality that way. But he told me at this festival, we were hanging out, and he invited me on stage, which was very cool and an honor to be invited. And before we went on, we were talking, and he was making this point about what he kind of knew about me and my sort of busking history and my open mic history. As I was watching him kind of play with his in-ears pack on his belt. And he told me he said, because I didn't have the experience like you, where if something goes a bit wrong in a live experience, in a live performance, I can just sort of play something else or sort of fake it one way to make it another way. He said, what I've learned to do in a slightly neurotic way is know exactly how my pack works, everything about it. And in a moment on stage, know how to edit or fix it. And that's that's the best way I can describe it. That's like the kind of 10 years younger than me's generation of kind of what they've learned and how to do it. I guess, at least in his case, and probably in lots of artists and performers' cases of that sort of age. It was interesting.
Yeah. But it's funny. I think thinking about how you develop, I mean, I tell this all the time. Whenever I meet players, especially, that I'm always like, you are such an incredible player. I'm telling you, it is 90% of the time they were in a cover band for 3 years, 5 years, because there's, and to your point in your pedigree, there's something about when you have to do something and learn how people do it, and you're studying the Stones for a little while before you do, or you're busking and you're having to throw covers in there.
Yeah,
you just sort of osmotically take all this information in.
That's very true. That's always, I think it's a great and worthwhile thing to be talking about on this kind of platform where lots of people on their musical journeys will be listening, because that plays into the sort of 10,000 hours.
That's exactly right.
If you're doing covers and like, busking or open mics, that moment, whether it's a cover or your own song, particularly with busking, you are faced with a moment where you've stopped in the street, having walked down into town with your guitar on your shoulder. And when you stop in the street, that's it. You got to put it down, and people are going to be walking past, looking at you, going, "What's this guy doing? How come he's just stopped in the street?" And you just got to go through with it all. And I remember the first times trying that, and it's very daunting. But you are asking yourself in that moment, well, do I want to sort of have an effect on some people with my music? Do I want to find out, what I'm sort of kind of made of and what I'm worth here? Because this is the best place right now where I'm going to kind of find that out.
Well, so, and here's the last question I have before we jump into the 5 hot takes. So because it seems like, looking at your career, the star rose really quickly, and it did. But it's really interesting, isn't it, that if you actually peel back the years a little bit, you realize there was all this time that you've been doing it.
Yeah, that's Yeah, that's. I think about that a lot, and I've faced. I was faced in the last few years. Like sort of 5, 6, and 7 years ago were the moments from between 2013 and sort of 2015. I had a lot of people saying, "Tell us how. Tell us about how. Tell us about your overnight success." and it sort of falls two ways. That's fair in one respect, because to the world, they didn't know you one day and they do the next. because hopefully of a song, in my case, a song. And that's fantastic. And I'm super proud of it. But there's this other thing that you're thinking when you're asked, how it feels for that to have happened, which is, how do I tell them really quickly, like in this sort of 90-second soundbite segment about the 10 years, about the 10 years I've spent like learning covers and playing covers and getting talked over by 50 people in a bar, and then recognizing the moment when they listened to a chorus that I'd written, but they weren't listening to the rest of the song. They were talking over that. It's all super important, all those moments. And they obviously shape you and help you sort of build your craft and all of that. But so it's a strange one to talk about, but there was a moment. There was, of course, a moment in all of it where there was a bit of an overnight thing, because, like I say, as a result of people liking one or two songs of mine in the beginning of my sort of more professional sort of leg of my career so far, these songs reacted. And everybody who didn't know I existed suddenly knew I did.
Suddenly knew it. And all those people that saw you in a pub like 5 years before, like, that's the guy.
There's a lot of that.
Guy?
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, How did I guess part B of that last question is, how did you deal with that? Like, what were the ways that you sort of, or how did you think about that as it was really exploding?
I really tried to. Usually they use this phrase with sort of negative stuff, but I suppose, I don't know, there'll be a better version of this phrase, but I sort of tried to just take it on the chin and kind of like move through it as calmly as I could, or in as calm a way as I could, and just enjoy the parts in it that I'd enjoyed before. Essentially any of the kind of fame aspect, always enjoy. It was always like the most exciting thing to go to America and stand in any room and play my songs, because I was in America doing it, or, because I dreamed about that kind of thing, or like Shepherd's Bush Empire in a historic venue in London, to get to play there. It wasn't like, check me out, I'm me and I'm doing this. It was like, wow, they're all right with me playing in here tonight because a load of people have come to see it. That's the thing I dreamed about. So I just sort of held on to, held on to the genuinely exciting aspects of it all that would have excited sort of 7-year-old me, 17-year-old me, and
or 70.
Or 70.
What was the first show in that season that you played that you kind of like goosebumped? That you kind of went like, holy cow.
That's a good question.
You felt like it had all, the stars were really aligning and you're on stage and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like one of those moments I wanted to happen and it's happening.
One of the earliest ones was actually probably Hotel Cafe in LA.
That's
because
so great.
So I was 22 or 21 or 22 when I played in there for the first time. And it was a bit of a showcase thing. There were some really early fans who sort of knew one song that I'd put online, who had heard it and were in LA and came. And then there was a sort of a chunk of industry types there. But I was 22. From the age of 14 or 15, I was on YouTube looking at people doing performances in Hotel Cafe.
Yeah, in Hotel Cafe.
So I had dreamed about being in that room.
I love that.
So
love that.
Oh, it's so funny as well. My wonderful, lovely manager, Ryan, he can't drive at this point. He's not someone who drives. And he came to LA with me and I can drive. So I drove the car. And there was a very scary 5 minutes where the traffic in LA was so intense that he got out the car to run to the venue. And I had to sit in the car behind the wheel, like trying to park it.
He's coming.
And then Ryan was just like, he is coming, I promise.
Isn't that great? And I just want to reiterate what you've just said. I love that. And of course, you're such a wonderful person. It's one of the things that I think is so amazing about you. But that you didn't say first time you played Shepherd's Bush, first time you played the O2, where, and those are great. I can't imagine, but
crazy,
I think all the same that moment was when you were like, holy cow, I'm standing on stage at this venue that I've watched, that's got so much history. And
it's crazy to have those moments. And actually what's funny is, the bigger venues are still exciting and they're still important and all of that. But if there are moments, there was a moment, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but there was a moment where I could sell more tickets than Hotel Cafe, or I could sell more tickets than 2 Hotel Cafes. So you feel for a moment like, oh, I've left that venue behind. But the fact that I can go back there and play in there on occasion is even more special, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's the great thing. And, people, this so well, which we'll talk about this a little bit later. This is a question I want to address, but I will hold there. I think the thing that's so crazy is for people who don't play music, there's and this is such a dumb thing to say, but it's true. There's such a difference between Hotel Cafe and the O2.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, which is a huge venue in England, but you think, well, it's just a bunch of people, but no. I mean, the way you do the show, how you have to, run the show. I remember the first time talking to some of my friends who were starting to do really big shows years ago, and me just being like, what's the deal? And they were like, dude, it's just, you throw so many things out the window.
Yeah.
Because when you're playing Hotel Cafe, one of the things that's so fun is the interaction. Like, you're talking, they're listening, you're laughing, you're off the cuff, you're making, and then all of a sudden you get to a big venue like that, and the joke turns into
and it's pointless, and it's completely pointless, and you sort of become like a Broadway or like a West End stage performer when you get to the big places. But I'm just remembering some of there was a recording of John Mayer at Hotel Cafe that I found on YouTube when I was a kid, and I got so obsessed with it. And again, so appreciated even more the beautiful nuances of playing in I call it a tiny room. It's always a big deal, but it's a small room.
Yeah, it's a small room, yeah.
And falling in love with those moments where, and there's other examples of this from other performers, but he'll say something between songs, and then there's that weird sort of half silence where you can hear. I'm not watching this. This wasn't a visual. It wasn't a video. It was audio. You can hear a facial expression that he's made, and then the people in the front row who've reacted to it. And from about this, from a performance perspective, we are tuning into those things massively because it's all part of the craft again.
Yeah, it's such a different thing. And again, to the people out there that don't play music, and you've seen guys like James go from smaller clubs to huge arenas. It can't be said enough. Like, those things are really fun, but each of them carry their own weights. And I think people can look at what we do and think, well, isn't the goal always to get to the big venue? And sometimes it is, sometimes it is, but it's not the same show. And you can have skill sets that actually don't work at one or the other.
It's very true. And I've been watching a lot of music documentaries lately. I kind of always am doing that, but there's a couple of moments lately where I've heard different individuals. I think there was a moment in the Eric Clapton one recently. The other day I watched it, and it's called Life in 12 Bars. It's very good. Really good. And he said it, and someone else said it. I heard there was a comedian that was saying everybody's ego is all about the arenas. Yeah. But the artist in everyone is all about the theaters.
Oh, that's so good.
Or maybe somewhere smaller.
That's
but we all know that a theater, like when I go to the Fox Theatre in Oakland.
Yeah.
I just, and when I played the Beacon Theatre in New York, I did 2 nights there last year. And I played Radio City, which is a bigger theatre. And I really hope to get to Madison Square Garden one day, because that would be a dream for its history alone. But the Beacon, I just had the magic.
That's it.
They have the magic.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That size somehow accomplishes exactly what your vision for what you do is.
It's got scale, but it's got intimacy, and it's just wonderful.
All right, James, you know what it's time for.
I'm very excited.
Time for the first hot take.
Hot take 1.
Come on, bring it on.
Okay, I don't know how. I want to sort of. So many ways I wanted to try and sort of settle this up, and I because I've obviously overworked this in my mind massively, but purely from excitement. And I'm glad I've wound up with 5. I had some sort of peripheral extras, and I don't know. I've almost been studying your Instagram stories, 5 hot takes. Anyway, number 1. And this is, of course, a tribute to the great man that we recently lost, Mr. Bill Withers.
Oh, come on.
But I've observed this thing, and it fascinates me. And there are some great examples, but I feel like we find it in all of his songs. So Bill Withers is. I'm looking at my notes here.
This
obviously,
is great.
I got script.
This is.
Well, it's a terrible script. If that. He's of course responsible for, classics, but he's kind of the most. They're always the most refined. And sort of, it's the most refined and sort of lean songwriting to the degree which I have recognised. Feel free to challenge this. Some of his best and biggest songs, he's got them down to 2 sections. typically songwriting is a verse and a chorus and a third section, a bridge, a middle eight.
Blowing my mind right now.
Whatever you want to call it. But go Ain't No Sunshine, Grandma's Hands, Use Me. 3 of his big ones. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. That song doesn't even have an intro. He's not even worried about an intro at that point.
He's in at the top.
It's not born when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. How did they not? And then he's got the I know section. So he's got like verse.
Yeah.
With a great line, Ain't No Sunshine, which is the title of the song. And then he's got the I know section. And then he does the Ain't No Sunshine thing again, and we're done. And it's one of the absolute most classics. And then Grandma's Hands. This is so geeky because I've got a guitar. It's the best way that us.
This is the best. This is the best.
That was it. So it's got Grandma's Hands at the church on Sunday morning. Girl, the tambourine so well. Oh, Grandma's Hands. It's out of morning. He say, Billy, don't you run so fast. Don't turn a piece of glass. There's Grandma's Hands. And that's it. There's those two sections. Cow. It's verse and then it's that sort of so it's 1 and 2 sections. And then not Lean on Me. Use Me. What does it do?
Right.
I want to spread the news that if it feels this, that's the second section.
Yeah.
So it's
James, this is I just want to applaud this. This is incredible.
I was trying to bring some A game sort of hot takes.
No, you don't understand. I'm not saying anything because my brain is just like wrapping itself around here. So here's the thing about Bill Withers that I think is really fascinating. He is okay. This is going to sound really bizarre, but stay with me. I think he and Tom Petty are twins in the way they write songs, because they both have this incredible ability to take the simplest. They keep going simpler until what they have found is a diamond. They literally just beat the thing to death.
Yes.
Until all they bring, and it's with Tom and Bill both. There's just no fat, and fat. Literally no fat.
No, carry on. Yeah, it blows my mind. I was looking to, those Ain't No Sunshine, Grandma's Hands, and Use Me are really big ones of his. Even Lovely Day, because when I wake up in the morning, it's sort of verse pre and then the line. Lovely day, lovely
day.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got when I wake up in the morning, the sunlight hits my eyes, and then it goes, when I look at you, and he's sort of on the same thing.
Yep.
But it is I appreciate it's I would say that the verse and that are slightly different. And then you just got a lovely day. And
that's it.
It's the chorus, I guess, but it's one line.
Yeah, it's one line.
And it's the same.
Man,
yeah.
That is fat. I'm going to think about that a lot today.
And he does it a lot. Like, I've tried to name his hits, as it were, because I think it's phenomenal that they're such enormous songs. And, people talk about 3 chords and the truth. Often he's 2 chords and the truth.
That's right.
But he's got all sorts of other. He's got a beautiful song called "Hope She'll Be Happier." You know that one? Maybe in the lateness of the hour, and so does. Makes me feel bluer than I am. In her heart there's a shower. Hope she'll be happier with him. That's what it does. Yeah. And then there's the second section. I can't believe that she really did leave me. It's 2 sections. I mean, it's a lesser known, but it's a beautiful balance. That's
crazy. I do think, with him, I always wonder because, he had this other career until his stats are crazy. If you look at what that guy did, he was only in the game, I think, for 11 years, 10 years.
Something nuts, yeah.
And then he was just like, I'm out. See ya. But I think there was something about his simplicity, which I think may have just been the end of what he knew he could even do. That he was like, I can function well within these couple of walls, and get done what I need to get done. I also think with him, man, I talked about this. I did a 5 hot takes with a good friend of mine, John McLaughlin, and John and I were talking about. I can't tell you how much, in my opinion, someone's voice is doing the lion's share of the work in a lot of artistry. And it sounds ridiculous, but I think he is an archetype of that for me, because his voice it did so much work.
It
Those
really
songs
did.
are amazing on their own. They stand the test time. But when paired with his voice, you don't care that there's not some, because it's communicating. You're tired. I'm good. By the end of the song, I'm like, you have given me what I need.
Yeah.
I feel it. I feel everything you're trying to communicate. And I think that's something that's a real gift of his, is that you don't need these little tricks and tropes because he's able to get what he needs done just by singing in those, like you said, those 2 sections. You know?
But the acceptance, because I'm sure you've seen Still Bill, the movie, and really we should just point people in that direction, because we could go off on all the different great quotes from that, and they are wonderful. But and he talks about this as well, but I just want to sort of nod towards it, the acceptance that he has for this might be it. This might be me. He wrote. I don't know about the chronological order. I forget, but he wrote "Ain't No Sunshine, Grandma's Hands," "Use Me," "Lean on Me," "A Lovely Day." But 3 songs into that 5, he was saying to himself, like he was 2 songs into that 5 or 4 songs into that 5, he was saying to himself, "Well, this might be it, and I'm fine with that because I've given this the best I can." And I've refined it, and I've sort of shredded it down to the most lean diamond, as you say, to the most sort of shiny diamond. But
I would also say,
good.
I haven't done this in a hot take yet, but I stand by this. If you gave me 5 slots for songs to send into the ether, to aliens, or to some other, life form, to say this is what music is. Lean on Me is in those top 5. It
has to be.
It's like the completely perfect, incredibly simple and profound, insanely memorable, and emotionally completely effective. I'd need a lot of time to sit and even think about what the other 4 are, but I tell you for sure that one's in there. The
expression of he's captured this is if aliens went, what's this humanity that you're talking about? I go, oh, humanity, let me play you this song. This is what humanity's all about. This is what it is. You listen to this song, and the sentiment, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Oh, that's what you humans are about. Yeah, that's what I want to show the aliens.
Yes, and I think too is if you've played piano at all, it's one of the, you realize the incredible simplicity of that song.
I mean,
and I think that's the magic, is that your 5-year-old can sit down and go, dum, do, 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 and yet just what he does with that, and the fact that you got to think that when he wrote that song, he was like, surely somebody's done this.
Yeah, He must have started looking through all of Paul McCartney's. He's like, Paul's got to have done this at some point, surely. But
oh man,
right. Okay. All right. Hot take number 2.
Hot take 2.
Kind of a brief one. It's going to fly by a little bit, but I'm curious to see how you feel. There's this theory. It's not a theory. I've just recognized it. I've recognized it in this song, and I wonder. I'll set you this homework for later on. If there are other songs where it happens. Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, which is one of my earliest musical memories. Actually,
yes.
My dad was such a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and I don't know if I can play this melody on the guitar, but I'll sort of half sing it, and you know it. But it goes, so it opens, ba, 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 ba. Those are the notes. And then it goes, born down in a dead man's town. First kick I took was when I hit the ground. And he carries on. And then he goes, born in the USA. Massive song.
Huge.
Same notes. It's always the same notes. And it never goes anywhere else. It never goes
Holy cow.
It never goes, if it's there, da, 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 it never goes, well, it does, but that's sort of, ba, ba, da, 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 that's all part of this chord sequence. It's like the one melody rule or something. He just goes, it's the synth intro, ba, 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 ba,
you get it 3 times.
And that's
you get the synth intro, the verse, and the chorus. Dude, I've never thought about that, James.
But that's the song. Everything else, with all respect, and it's one of my favorite songs ever, is a sort of great ad-lib. Like later on, he's going like, ah, he's doing this sort of semitone wobble. Da, 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 da. And he goes, born down in a dead man's town. First kick he took was going to hit the ground. Yeah, he goes, ground. He sort of paints around the main theme.
but it's absolutely
just that
what
melody.
It's built on.
It's that melody. Da, 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 da. He loved that so much when he went. He's like, that's.
You know what I think is so fascinating about that is that if it was any other title, I don't know if it works, but because that title is so substantial,
I think something about the time as well. I haven't been diving into the sort of history of the country, the America or the world at that time, but like it was a moment in sort of American blue collar history, if not further than that.
Right.
And he could go born in the USA, and despite what the lyrics are saying and what the song is about, in all of its sort of, it's an interesting what he says and how he says it, but like it sort of makes me think about Hosier's Take Me to Church as well. Although it was a difficult subject matter for him writing it. This moment in a song where so soulfully and sort of elatedly people can go, take me to church, like it's got its power in its own way.
Yeah.
And people don't have to care what the song's about. Same with Born in the USA. It's just a sort of great patriotic.
Which both of those songs actually mean different than what you think they do.
Exactly, that's the point.
Which is genius. So okay, let's
melody there. That sort of
that. Now you've done this thing where I'm going to be obsessed finding other songs that do that, and I bet that's really hard.
It's very hard, and the one where I almost thought got away with it, but kind of doesn't. But it interested me was that one, your love is lifting me higher.
Oh, yeah.
I've ever been lifted before. Da-da-da, my desire. And I'll be at your side forevermore. And your love. What was it? Your love keeps lifting me. Yes, I don't know. It was close. You can cut that.
You know, the thing that's crazy about that, I think there are the first place I would look is Motown songs.
Yeah.
There were a good bit of those that kind of did sort of a similar thing where they would sort of stay on the same melody and then all of a sudden it's a chorus again. But I think some of the magic of how people pull that off is if you start the song with the chorus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you know the melody, and then when you hear it again, it feels like a chorus.
But that's what blew me away about Springsteen is it's this great instrumental intro on a synth, and then it's the verse melody down a register or a couple, octaves, and then he goes born in the USA, ba 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 ba. It's the same. It's
the same thing
to the layman's ear. It's just like
that's crazy.
I like to say, go on, you go.
Well, let me ask you this. So I want to backtrack a little bit because I sprinkle in personal questions. That's what we do here.
Please.
So you are obviously a really good guitar player. Like
I'm trying.
And how so when you write songs, and something that I think is so cool about your albums is if you know them at all, you know that you play well because one, you can hear you playing, but also I think it you see your hand pretty quickly that so many of your songs are instrument hook heavy. Do you know what I mean? You're not just going like, hey, let's kick into the song and we're in. They all have.
I suppose it's how. Here's the best way to talk about it. Up until almost like signing a record deal, I was like singing and writing songs. And playing guitar, singing and writing songs was one thing. Playing guitar was separate.
Yeah.
And the reason why you hear what you hear in my music is because since sort of signing a record deal, my quest has been to sort of fuse the two, but make it for everyone.
That's great.
Because before that, you've got me as noodly guitar player who wants to sort of riff and sort of solo and all of that stuff, and be way too much. And you got me as songwriter trying to write songs that mean something to me, but hopefully are for everyone. I want to get the guitar playing element to be for everyone because
that's beautiful. Those are the biggest.
Those are the biggest guitar riffs moments in music, like in the history of music. So,
which is funny because if Layla is your gateway drug, you're doing what that does.
It's interesting. Yeah, sure, I am. And what's interesting about Layla is it's one of the most guitar playery pop songs.
That's right.
But that's what I get interested by. That one interests me. Satisfaction by the Stones. It's so singable. All the best guitar parts are singable.
Yeah,
Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
Smoke on the Water is the same. So I'm just trying to. The reason you hear that stuff in my music is because I'm trying to make all the guitar playing or guitar parts as relevant as the song is, or the lyric. Or the melody.
For what it's worth, I think you do it really well.
Thanks, man.
Do you feel like as you're writing the song, is that something that's happening as you write it, or is that a retro? Like you kind of have the song and you go, okay, how can I?
It varies. It varies. I remember one of my good friends and a fantastic songwriter called Ian Archer, who I wrote "Hold Back the River" with. And he's a great guitar player as well. He's Irish, and he kind of comes from a very instrumental like upbringing and background. And we would sit around. Typically, we've written lots of songs. We wrote 3 songs for my first record, one called "Craving," another called "Best Fake Smile," and then "Hold Back the River." And we would sit around for that first record. "Hold Back the River" was the last one we wrote together.
Yep. Which has such a distinctive part.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the nice thing about it is I'm trying to apply. I've come from doing things sort of all on my own when I'm sort of being me as an artist. Me and a guitar is how it all started. So I've always got that at the front of my mind. You know, we all as songwriters want it to sound great on one instrument with one voice. But we sat around for hours, as we would always do, and sort of talk and hang out and be musical and play stuff. And it was funny how that just came, because we tried chord stuff all day, and I always want it to be more guitar riffy than just chords. And this, you know, just sort of landed between those two things as a riff. But, you know, chords, E minor, it's in a different key, but I'll call it out like this. E minor, essentially F sharp minor, G, B minor up to C.
Which sound, by the way, like that sounds gorgeous.
Thanks, man. But you can think about it as chords, and you can also, from a guitar playing perspective and like a finger picking perspective, look at it as a riff.
Right.
And that's what I want to do, basically. Yeah. So we settled for that also because we love the sound of it and it felt hooky. And hey, if a guitar part can be hooky, then I'm keeping it. You know,
well, and you know that's to me, that's, you know, always such an interesting trick when you're writing songs with and for other people, is like, that's how my brain works too. You know, I think both of our coming up, when you're a guy with a guitar, you're kind of going like, how do I keep people interested in the middle when I'm not singing? You know, and you know, just throw as much as you can at the wall, and that's one of the things you throw. But I think it's interesting. It makes me sad sometimes that you get in a room and you can rock through these songs and you may get a great song, but there's not somebody in there, because if the artist in there, especially, or even sometimes you get the artist, but they're not going, hold on, there's no happier moment to me in a writing room than when you're writing with an artist and they go, hold on, how would I play this? And I'm like, oh, okay, now this is, I love this moment. Because,
it gets to another degree of real. And what we want to put out there, and actually what people want to hear, is the realist stuff. To phrase it one way, there's deeper and sort of more in-depth ways to phrase that. But we want it to be real. And, you know, you obviously we're always trying to keep it simple and not sort of coat too much other sort of sound and noise around it. But yeah, you know, I am a guitar player from the start. And as far as writing, one of the other ways I write is I go to the piano, which I'm much less good at. I'm not really very good at it. And that's the thing I love about writing on it, because I just stumble across things.
Right.
But then some of the best guitar writing that we've heard are songs from players and singers who might not technically be the best guitar player in the world, but they are dripping and oozing with like a vibe and like emotion and atmosphere. And that's where I always love the story that Caleb Followill from Kings of Leon, what did he do? He had a broken arm. His right arm was sort of fixed around the elbow in a right angle. So his left arm, sorry. So he couldn't move it up and down the guitar neck. It had to stay around the sort of 9th to the 12th fret. So he could.
Oh, wow.
So he could only be there. And he had Sex on Fire.
That is
Don't
so
make a
cool.
sound. I know you're watching. And then he stays up here. He plays an E chord, a classic E chord, but over the 12th fret. Well, the sort of 13th, 14th fret, rather than down in the normal position.
Right.
And you can see right now, like, my left arm is not moving around.
It's staying the same thing.
And so technically, he's not Pat Metheny. He's not like
right.
But it doesn't matter. He's written.
It's such an iconic part.
Exactly. He's a cool guitar player. He's a cool guitar player writing a great song.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I'll say too quickly before we move on to your third.
Yeah.
I think people, again, that don't play instruments, what you're doing, like seeing you at the Ryman, anytime a lead singer is playing any lead parts at all, it is mechanically so hard to do.
Absolutely.
Like I think that so when I was touring on my first record on Rage and Tie, the Slave Laws on New York, I toured as a 3-piece.
Sweet.
And so there was some pretty heavy guitar stuff in there I'd play on the record, but not while I was singing.
No.
And I'll never forget like having to put together a rig and running those songs first couple times. And I was like, there's no way I can do this. Just physically. I don't mean play. Just mechanically hitting the pedal at the right time, unhitting, changing to distortion, singing. It's like people, that is a very undervalued skill set.
I will say, watching Ed in stadiums in front of 50, 60, 70, 80,000 people a night doing the things he's doing with his feet is very exciting to see. And the muscle memory that he's got it down to when it comes time to do the shows is such a huge part of the art. But just to nod to someone from a bit further back, to shed light on this because it's not always known, the greatest singer of all time, Aretha Franklin, was one of the greatest piano players,
incredible
keys players out there. And actually Donny Hathaway is a great example as well, someone who's less known. And of course, Stevie Wonder is known for being a great singer, great keys player, a great instrumentalist. Stevie Wonder plays everything brilliantly. But let's just consider what Aretha Franklin always was able to do with her voice. And then know that when she did the Bridge Over Troubled Water cover, one of the finest things I've ever heard, she was playing all that piano. I forget if it's Rhodes or piano, but she's doing all that.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
That's something. It's funny if you ever see an interview with people that knew her. What they always feel like they have to say that, which I love. I think so many people are like, people don't understand how good she was at playing piano because I think it was such an underrated. Okay, last thing I promise. I remember talking to Mayer. John had me come play on one of his. He had this thing called the Mayer Craft Carrier. It was like this cruise thing. I went and played, and we were hanging, and we were talking about this. We were talking about playing and how do you navigate that. And I thought, because I asked him, I was like, man, do you feel like I need to really lean into the guitar more? And he's like, man, here's the thing. One of the greatest artists and guitar players of all time is Jeff Buckley. He said, my opinion, and I guarantee you, he couldn't have ripped a solo to save his life. And I was like, that's a cool way to think about that. Is that you don't have to be, but you can still create these incredible. There's
degrees of technically accomplished that sure we can all get to, but what we're trying to say is in the kind of world life and almost the business of great songs, you don't have to be those things. You don't have to be technically. You sort of don't have to be technically anything.
Right.
And that's the beauty of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hot take 3, James, bring it to us.
Hot take 3.
Numero 3. Here we go. I feel like I'm going back here. I'm going back to loads of old stuff, and I don't always. So because I got a few to go. But you will appreciate as a fellow songwriter in the 21st century, particularly. And I really hope all the songwriters today who've been working for years or maybe weeks. This one. So Christine McVie, famous for her work with Fleetwood Mac, among other things, and famous for writing some absolute bangers, wrote a song. So there was a great, over here in the UK on the BBC, there was a really fantastic, sometime in the last year, there was a fantastic documentary about Christine McVie, not about Fleetwood Mac, but about Christine herself.
Yeah, just her.
So I plucked this story from that because it's a fantastically hot take. She wrote a song called Songbird, which is on Rumours, which is one of the most stunning ballads of all time. She tells this story about how I think she was in California and she woke up in the middle of the night. It was something like somewhere between 3 and 6 in the morning. And this idea came to her. So she walked over to her piano, but she had in her room. And she said the song just came out right there and then. And it's like a 2.5 minute song, I think, or like a 3 minute song. And it just came out. It all came to me. It was one of those moments. And the songwriters, we love these stories when we hear about these moments where the song just drops into your lap and it's gorgeous. Then she realized the time of night that it was. So she called the most local studio and nobody answered. And then eventually she got through and they said, yeah, I mean, we don't open till like 9 a.m. at the earliest. She said, but I need to, I've got this song. I need to get it down. she said, okay, well, the person on the phone said, okay, well, when the studio opens, you can come put it down. So she spent the best part of 6 hours holding on to one of the greatest songs I think ever written. And let's just appreciate, my hot take really is, let's just appreciate the lack of iPhone voice notes, the lack of a portable dictaphone, the lack of anything that would record anything.
Incredible.
And it's one of those moments in history, and there must be so many of them, where, you know, there's a story about Keith Richards recording. He had a little tape recorder in his room, so he got it in the middle of the night, and he doesn't remember it, and he heard it the next day. She didn't have one of those with her at the time. It was like 1970-something. So she just remembered the song. She played it over and over again. She was exhausted the next day. But the thing that mattered the most was that stunning song, and she got the song.
Don't you wonder how many songs didn't get remembered?
I'm terrified. It terrifies me.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it terrifies me.
That like they just got lost in the ether. Like, you know, Stevie Wonder woke up in the middle of the night and had this great idea, and then woke up in the morning, he's like, Dad.
You must have had this, and I'm sure all those guys did too. And I've had it from time to time. I'm dreaming the greatest song idea I've ever come up with. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to remember it when I'm conscious, and it's nowhere near as good. Yeah.
Oh, nowhere near. You know, there's this one, you know, Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way was one of those songs. He woke up in the middle of the night, and I think may have written it, like just wrote it and, you know, like did a little and went back to sleep. But it's crazy, like, you know, again, for the non-muso people out there, that's in fact, I'm not just saying this, but I think I'm 90% sure I dreamed a song last night. Now that you're saying that,
she talks about. Sorry to interrupt. She talks about how the song might have, you know, changed slightly as she spent the best part of 6 hours playing it round and remembering it. But look at what we got. Listen to the song that we got. Like, for all of that and what the first iteration of it was. Wow! Thank God that she played it round.
You and I talked about this at that breakfast about her. She is. Listen, Fleetwood Mac is a diesel engine of incredibleness. But to me, she is, because she, you know, I think because of the personalities, she's just rarely talked about because the other ones are so much more fascinating as people. But she, to me, was the pop song assassin.
Yeah,
you know, for all of you know, for all of either one of the other. She of the third of that triad, triad of power. Those albums just needed what she did, because there was Lindsay's really cool, quirky, awesome guitar, cool, whatever. And then you had Stevie's really artsy, bizarre. She was that middle to the band. She was like, okay, we have Rhiannon and we have, you know, like Go Your Own Way. Both these great. Now let me just softball. I'm just going to chuck the easiest little that you can hit every time.
Yeah.
She was a ninja.
She did that. She did I Want to Be With You Everywhere.
Oh my gosh. What is that song? Oh man, I can't start this game because I'm just gonna sing every chorus
it's sort of in my head as well. What did she do? I want to be with you.
Hold on me. What is that? Hold on me. Hold on me. I think that was a solo song of her.
We'll get them. We'll get them. They're all there. And she's like, it's almost like, I mean, arguably, these two are equals. Her and George Harrison sit in the biggest bands of all time, and then they just sort of roll out these massive songs. After the sort of supposed big songwriters in the band are sort of done doing their thing. Yeah,
that's right.
And then they come out with these juggernauts. And
which to me, one of we'll move this quickly. One of the most slept on songs of all time is George Harrison's. What's the solo hit he had?
Got my mind set.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? That song.
After this, go into the internet, the great, deep and wild and wonderful internet, and check out, I think it's a cover.
What?
We're on a computer right now.
Is that a cover? Are you about to break my heart? It's okay if it is.
I don't want to break your heart. The thing is, I don't want to break anyone's heart. Got my mind. I don't want to break anybody's heart. Give me the Wikipedia page, please. Come on. Yeah. Oh. Give me the Wikipedia. George Harrison in 1987 released a cover version of I've Got My Mind Set on You.
Look at you.
Originally recorded by James Ray in 1962. We still love George.
Hey,
there's no
that
question.
Has nothing to do with our affection for the man.
We still have affection, but boy, did he absolutely crush that
Murdered
record.
that song. It is so good.
That is an early. I wasn't alive when that song came out, but it's an early memory for me. It was on like, oh, what a song! Every radio station that my parents listened to, they played that song. Oh, lot of precious.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Oh, no, later on, to do it. Yeah.
To do it right. Oh,
All
my
right.
gosh, that song. All right, come on.
Hot take 4.
Numero 4. I'll stop doing numero. Number 4.
I like that.
Okay, number 4 is an interesting one. This is I feel like this is like a confession, or maybe it's just something you didn't know about me. 9 out of 10 songs written by anyone will have the word baby as a term of affection. That's fine.
Okay.
I've never done that.
Have you never?
I've never done it. And I'll tell you this, I don't think I can pull it off. I've never done it.
The admission. I made a joke about myself one time where you should call my songs a nursery for how many babies they have in them. Like I use that word to such frequency that I'll have moments where I'm like, Dave, you can't. It's become a stopgap. I just chuck it in when I need 2 syllables.
The weirdest thing is I'll cover a song with it in and I'll sing it. I'll cover someone's song and I'll sing the word if it's in there. Even if it's like an ad-lib on the recording of that person's song and I'm doing a version like that. But the closest I've ever gotten is I wrote the word maybe with an M, and
cool.
People sometimes sing that back and think it's the word baby.
Would you think with a song like Move Together?
That's the place. That's the place.
That's where you're going to do it.
It goes, maybe don't give me cold. Wait, I've got the wrong melody. It goes, maybe don't give me cold shoulder. But everybody in the crowd, I watch them go, baby don't. And I'm like, you guys can have that. That's all. That's all yours. They can get away with it.
Tell me how you realized that. What made you realize that?
Every time I'm I guess one of the biggest ones, the thing that made me realize it is in co-writing scenarios, people are like deep into what we're doing and we're all loving it. And they're like, I've got it. And they've got a lyric that they think sort of really works. And it probably 99% of the time does. And I guess they think it suits me too, because this is in moments when we're writing songs that I'm going to use. And they go, you should say this. And I've had to confess it sometimes. And they've very politely gone, yeah, that's not you. You know what? We'll keep going. I don't know why, man. It's so bizarre.
Do you feel like you're on a streak you don't want to break at this point?
Maybe, yeah. I feel like, I don't know.
You've done it this long. If you and I ever get to write together, that is going to be, it won't work because I will subliminally offer one every 3, because that is, you don't know how many times I've used. You and I are the antitheses of each other. Like we stand on the opposite ends of that.
Hold the balance.
Yeah, we hold it. So if you use one or I don't, it's gonna get.
I don't know why. I sometimes I think it's sort of a British thing, but it's not, because there's a billion people in this country who use it affectionately, and it's fine. I just don't, and I just thought there's a great curveball for the 5 hot takes and something that nobody knew.
Yeah. So before we end on your 5th one, I want to ask this question because we kind of talked about this earlier. But if I'm making James Bay out of musical soup, right? And I'm what are the ingredients in there? Who are the artists that have come that you are the great sort of like culmination of? What are the influences?
It's an interesting question in a way, because I like how potentially the ingredients won't make sense to people as far as what we're saying.
That's why I love this question.
They create.
I love this question. Yeah, I
think as far as what really like absolutely kind of turned me on and inspired me to go forward and be musical, it's Aretha Franklin, standalone, all on her own. For anything she's done, I adore it. So that music, and then a kind of a wider collection of sort of Motown and Stax. Would be the sort of second ingredient, and then
which I can hear in your singing, by the way.
Thanks, man. No, I don't mind if people
that
can't.
Makes a lot of sense.
It's just so there that I can't not say it. And as far as it I remember little cassettes of James Brown and stuff that my mum had, and we played them in the car, and they just blew my mind. So that really kind of rock and roll typically, and by rock and roll, I'll sort of say anything that does this. Yeah. Anything that does that. So go from Chuck Berry or just before, all the way through kind of past Springsteen, somewhere in the 90s when it all got really quite old doing that kind of thing. But right. I still adored it. So so that's sort of three ingredients. Aretha, broader sort of Motown stack soul, rock and roll in most forms. I just had another, and what was it? It's sort of the 70s Laurel Canyon singer-songwriter.
Oh yeah.
And into that I'll include, in that little sort of herb bag, the herbs include.
Yep.
Just harmonies, just the great harmony moments that came from anyone from sort of the Eagles to James Taylor, Carole King, even the way that Elton John was involved. So that's that sort of general sound. Then the sort of fourth one is kind of pop on both sides of the Atlantic. So sort of Adele, that really sort of British, ultra cool.
Yep.
Sort of you can't really argue with it. Kind of, it's sort of Adele, Amy Winehouse. There's a guy Paolo Nutini who I adore.
Oh, I love his stuff.
His stuff always gets me. Ben Howard is an album by a guy called Ben Howard. The album's called Every Kingdom. That album. Yep. Every Kingdom is crazy. So that sort of thing. And then just like hard left stuff, like Feist. She has a record called Metals. Metals is amazing. That one like kills me. There's a this is more recent, but like Margaret Glaspie is an artist who's, it's traditional songwriting and I adore it for that, but like she's coming from that kind of place as well. And there's much older stuff. I guess really you'd say Jeff Buckley, Grace, and like things going back before that, that's kind of left, but brilliant regardless. Even some of the like Pink Floyd stuff. I know there's like big choruses and great titles and lines that people sing, but it's like, it's out there at the same time. So a spritz of something quite out there kind of lands me at where I am.
You know what I love about that is one, the diversity of it all, which I think is always that you said it well right after I asked the question. And it's why I love the question, is because so much stuff gets unearthed that to the naked eye, like, oh my gosh. But then a lot of times retrospectively, you can listen to stuff and go, oh my gosh, like I'm actually hearing somebody said.
I love that about the sort of about the answer to that question. And like, if people know their stuff, then they'll appreciate that, like, for example, Dinah Washington and Amy Winehouse go together. But the first time I heard Dinah Washington sing was probably after I'd heard, like consciously, because my parents might have played that kind of stuff, but consciously it was after I'd listened to Amy Winehouse. And I went, oh, Amy Winehouse is just trying to sound like one of her heroes, Dinah Washington. Now I get it. And I didn't really know about Dinah Washington. And then I'm like, and it all adds up. But I didn't see it beforehand. So it's...
Well, and two, the other thing that I respect about that is that you have there's people that aren't, it's not all just, stuff you grew up with, that you're still listening to.
In that respect as well, it's around Frank Ocean and Chance the Rapper. And there's a great artist called No Name.
Oh yeah.
Those guys, and those they come after something like, for example, Alicia Keys, or even the hits of Destiny's Child, and that music collectively being more recent pop from sort of 2000 to now, really. That's the sort of add-on. That's one of the most recent ones for me that goes into the answer to your question that I can't deny, because it goes back as far as Alicia, for example, but it's still as recent and as vibrant as in me as Chance or Frank Ocean.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think, for as much as I lament the streaming services and what they're doing, sadly, to our income and how that's a whole tricky, hard. I was actually reading an article this morning about how they're trying to take more money away and from songwriters. It's a nightmare. But I will say this: one of the best things to me about Spotify is that it introduces me to so much new music. And I have been if I can attribute anything to being able to still write music 20 something years into this, it's because I just have so much more music coming in.
Yeah, that's that.
They do such a good job of that, you know.
It makes me think. So Ian, who I wrote "Hold Back the River" and many other songs with, typically he's a fan of all sorts of great music. Jeff Buckley is one, and that Grace record is a real moment for him over all the years. He loves it, and I remember him telling me, you know, people didn't know about that album. They didn't know about that music very well, and very sadly, the guy died. And then it was talked about again. And it just, in a couple of magazines, and there was a couple of sort of long form, what is this, like 1998 or something, 97? There's a couple of long form pieces of journalism where they got a bit more in depth. And the likes of Ian went back to that music. And then gradually over time, it became enormous. But that was not a time when, you know, it was constantly served to us on a Spotify and an Apple Music and a couple of other things. So, yeah, you weren't going to get access to music in the same way that we do now. So it's awesome that in that respect, as you're saying, that we get the music.
Yeah.
Like
and that there's still so much great stuff coming out. Okay, so here we go. Big five.
I've gone slightly in reverse here. Number 5.
Hot take 5.
I like number 5, and it references it. Well, not it references. I like number 5 because it speaks to a musician in me that I don't choose to sort of let out publicly and professionally. And I don't put this person at the front of things as much as my sort of 16-year-old self would like to. So here it is. And I'm going to say it, right? Overplaying sometimes is fantastic. Yeah, I know that's I know it's wild, but go with me. Layla by Eric Clapton. And I can't give you, I haven't got enough hands and guitars at the same time to give you this, but just go and listen to the verses. There's somebody, and it's probably Eric himself on a second track, playing a solo under the verse vocal the whole time. So it goes, you know, and it goes, and there's like, brown. He's going. So I wish I'd set that up in a better way, but there's all this overplaying going on in that record that actually just like massively adds to the atmosphere.
So much. And the energy.
And it is straight up somebody playing a guitar solo over somebody else singing a verse. They're singing the verse. And I'm like, what? And obviously typically these days, someone in the studio is going, or even after when someone's listened to the first bounce of an MP3 of a track, everyone's going, yeah, just sort of mute the overplaying guitar newly, and we're good. Eric and the gang, and it was like Tom Dowd, who's one of the most fantastic producers in the history of music, was sat there going, yeah, overplay, it's beautiful.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
So that, and there's a moment in, I love David Bowie's Young Americans, one of my favorite albums. Towards the end of the record, he does a cover of John Lennon's Across the Universe, which is a Beatles track.
Yeah.
Just going on the drum fills at the back of that. They're going like, nothing's gonna change it. And then nothing's gonna boom, nothing's gonna change my world. They are slickest, coolest, tightest, most fantastic drum fills that like I feel like everybody in the room plowed forward with the performance of the song, but they're just looking out the corner of their eye at the drummer going, cool it down.
or
he's like, no, this is me, I'm going.
Or they're like, my God, he's killing it.
I hope so. I hope
they're all just drinking the Kool-Aid. Why do you think that is? Tell me, why do you think that happened, and why did they get away with it?
I'm not sure, but it's got something to do with, in a weird way, what happened towards the end of the 90s and through the first 10 years of the 21st century. Everybody sort of in the process of making music, from songwriter all the way through to sort of A&R guy or whatever, they changed their mind about the sort of the process and the ingredients in quite a big way. I hate to say it, but I think in many ways minds closed rather than opened to all sorts of options, because there are great, beautiful examples, Bill Withers being a brilliant one, of music that, you know, older or that came out earlier than that Clapton record or that David Bowie record, that are super simple. Yeah. So we knew how to do the simple things. Sometime in the 70s, the 80s, or maybe even the 60s, people got a bit more okay about what I'm calling overplaying. But like, I was listening to Voodoo the other day, the D'Angelo record.
Oh my gosh.
And it's not that it's like overplaying, but that record is so legendary and kind of iconic. And it'll baffle you and me as kind of more typical songwriters forever, because someone's just going, no, we're good. Just do that, like vamp on that chord a little longer. It's good. And they're just allowing for something so free and so open. But now and again, it reaches the masses like Layla did, like Bowie could, and like D'Angelo did, you know. And so that's why I'm trying to say my sort of hot take is once in a while, we should allow for a little overplaying and just work on the mix. I don't know, just like, you know.
You know, and I do wonder, like, you know, I think I wonder if it's a cocktail of a couple things. One, it's Eric Clapton. So are you about to go tell Eric Clapton to stop playing?
Sure.
But I think too, it's Eric Clapton going, like, I gotta live up to my hype. You know, and I think so. I can't help but wonder. And I mean, I said this in a hot take on a previous episode. There's these double strums in Rocket Man.
Oh yeah.
But there was just this bravado.
Yes.
For so long in the studio before people knew what they were doing. Because to your point, and you nailed this, James, you have guys like Mutt Lange who around the same time were like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You will absolutely not do that.
Right.
I want 6 tracks.
Yeah.
If I throw all the drums on one, you know, assuming that's the asterisk there, so drums are just one track. I don't want any more than that. So it's good, you know, because that guy could have, you know, Angus could have ripped all of it. But you know, so you had producers at the same time who were not doing that. But I think so much of the 70s and you know the 80s too, but I think really the 70s, there was just this like, get in there and let's rock it. And if you want to
feel it out,
just feel it out.
Yeah. It's very true. And I don't know, all I'm trying to be, because look, 9 out of 10 times, I'm okay with there being less overplaying, but I think that 1 out of 10 times sort of moment is valid and important if it feels good. I was going to say if it's right, but that's not it. If it feels good, it feels good, follow it. You can, you know, these days we can do all sorts to it later. You know, they didn't have those, you know, they had to delete things so that they'd never get back once upon a time. But, you know, I don't know. I typically am not, you know, trying to do it in my music. And sometimes I am. And, you know, even live, I MD, I sort of direct my band myself. And understandably, lots of people have an MD who's sort of separate. The artist has a sort of separate MD. I run it myself. And yeah, I like to sort of say to the guys sometimes, just go all the way to the top of the mountain and then jump off, like go. And sometimes they'll go, really? And I'm going, yeah, like, you know, enjoy the moment.
Right.
You have to allow for that in music because someone in the crowd will get something from it or someone listening to the record will get something from it. We have to keep that light, that fire, that flame burning.
I agree.
As much as we have to continue to chase the standards set by the likes of Bill Withers, who were so lean in their work. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a curveball hot take, but
I love that, and I think too. You know, I think Jakir actually King, who produced your first record.
Yeah.
One of my good friends, Thad Cockrell, told me one time that he and Jakir were hanging out, and Jakir made a quote. I'm pretty sure it was Jakir. It said something like, "If you ever listen to, you know, a lot of the music, really up until I think like the '90s, there's always something in the track that was just too loud."
Yeah, you said it about Salt and Pepper.
Yeah, and I think to some degree,
there's
a different. This is a different theory, but I do think there is something. If you go through the '70s, there's always somebody you're going like, did he know they were recording?
I know.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, still to me, one of the weirdest and worst guitar solos of all time is Jackson Browne, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. Dr. My Eyes. I love that song, and I found out somebody told me that it is. I'm not kidding. I would put it down as the worst guitar solo of all time. I'm gonna do a hot take on this, but if you ever listen to it, it's. But somebody told me that would know this. They were like, "Oh yeah, the story is the guy was just running it to figure out what he was going to do, and then the producer was like, we're keeping it." And he was like, "You can't keep this." And they're like, "Yeah, let's keep it." Now that's the story. But you know, that was a huge hit. It's one of my favorite songs of all time, and the solo is just terrible.
It's like that story sort of reminds me of Al Cooper was the keys player when Bob Dylan did Like a Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was in the room and he wanted to be in the room. And when someone said, or the producer said, "Who's playing keys?" he just put his hand up, sat down at the Hammond, didn't know how to play it. And so it was the full half beat or a whole beat behind each chord change. So it goes, "Once upon a time you did so." And I think the chords are changing on the beat, but he's going, bah, 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 and changing. He's just sort of looking around the room. Like a guitar hand going C, G, A minor.
Oh my gosh!
Coming just afterwards, but it added so much, and maybe the most important thing is having someone in the process or multiple people in the process who are that open to all eventuality.
Well, I think you nailed it. And this is what I take away from this is it really is about the energy and how it makes you feel.
It has to
not what it looks like on the screen, not what don't we already have like, no, how do I feel when I play this? And like, I just feel good. When I'm muted, I feel less good.
Absolutely. I'll name drop. The last time I was in Nashville when we were hanging out, I was there working with a great man called Dave Cobb, who's a fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And Dave is a huge advocate for this way of doing. And I'm glad in 2020 and going forward, he is one of the people around, championing this way of doing it, because we were doing, there were moments, I can say this now and the music isn't out yet, but it will get heard. Like there were moments where he would kind of lead on that notion. And I love it when I've heard it in records. But when I'm making my own music, I would be less certain. And I was, obviously I had to trust him in his producer capacity. And I'm listening back now to mixes and things that are half mixed going, Dave, yeah, he knows that he was right.
Yeah.
Like, and so it was important, therefore, to have that person in the room. I mean, it was, in honesty, particularly even just on paper, it was one of the reasons I was excited to work with him. But when you're doing it for real in the moment, it's
terrifying.
It's terrifying. Yeah. And, but it's so important in all music.
Dude, James, everybody, that was James Bay. Bring it. Can I just, I want to give a round of applause to the homework for these 5 hot takes. And I want to give a double round of applause for you bringing a real guitar.
It felt like, I mean, if I sit here and try and sing stuff, it would be horrific. So it's better to at least give myself some pitch and try and hit it.
But, you're a legend. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, man. It's I hope. I know this will go far as a very exciting and eventually legendary format for people to come and talk about these beautiful depths of music that us guys care so much about. And there's a lot of us.
Right. Dude, that's been my favorite thing so far is the friends that are doing it are like, I need, like, give me time. And I'm like, oh wow. Like I need to, like, give me time.
That's why I appreciate you asked me a few weeks ago and I'm like, yeah, that's good. If he'd asked me any later, I would have been stressing, sweating a lot more. But I'm going to push this back. I'm going to push it back.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Dude, you're a legend. Thanks for doing this.
It's a joy. It's a pleasure.
Dave's 5 hot takes. Yeah.